It was a perfect summer day on an Australian beach when a body was discovered. A well-dressed man, found propped against a seawall, had no identification, no belongings, and no explanation for how he ended up there. The only clue: a tiny, cryptic scrap of paper in a hidden pocket, torn from a book no one could find. It was a single phrase: Taman Shud. This is the chilling story of a man who vanished from the world, leaving behind a riddle that has baffled detectives for over 70 years. The day was December 1st, 1948, and the sun was already warm on Somerton Park Beach in Adelaide, Australia. It was a beautiful, tranquil setting, the kind of place people went to relax and forget their worries. Around 6:30 a.m., a few passers-by noticed a man lying on the sand, his head propped against a seawall as if he were sleeping. He was immaculately dressed in a brown suit. His shoes were polished, and a cigarette was tucked behind his ear. He looked peaceful, almost as if he were just a tired traveler resting before the long journey ahead. But as the hours passed, and people watched him from a distance, it became clear something was wrong. His position hadn't changed, and his posture was unnatural. The initial discovery was made by a man named John Lyons, who thought the man was just drunk. But by 7 a.m., a couple out for a morning stroll saw him and became concerned. They noted his position and the fact that a man in a suit wasn't a common sight on the beach so early in the morning. They walked away, but the image of the man stayed with them. Around 11 a.m., another group of beachgoers, a couple, noticed the man. They observed that his arms were straight at his sides, his legs were crossed, and his polished brown shoes were surprisingly clean, as if he had been carefully placed there. It was a detail that would later prove crucial. A few hours later, at around 2 p.m., a man named John and his wife walked by and saw him. John, who was a trained lifesaver, went to check on him. He felt for a pulse, but found none. The man was dead. He was still in the same position, his head propped up against the seawall as if he were sleeping. He had no wallet, no money, and no identification. His pockets were empty, save for a few mundane items: a half-smoked cigarette pack, a bus ticket, and a train ticket. His clothes had all of their labels removed. It was as if he had been erased. The man's identity was a complete mystery. The police were called, and the investigation began. But they had no idea what they were getting into. They had stumbled into a riddle that would become one of Australia's most enduring cold cases. The autopsy was performed the next day. The doctors found no evidence of a struggle or any external injuries. The man's physical condition was excellent, and he had no signs of a struggle. His internal organs were congested with blood, and his spleen was enlarged. The cause of death was determined to be heart failure, likely caused by a powerful poison, but no trace of any poison could be found in his system. It was a silent, clean, and efficient death. The lack of a clear cause of death, combined with the absence of any identification, baffled the investigators. The man had to be a foreigner, a spy, or someone who had been deliberately erased. He was a man who had vanished from the world, leaving behind a body and a series of cryptic clues that would only deepen the mystery. The police, led by Detective Sergeant Lionel Lean, launched a full-scale investigation. They publicized the case, hoping that someone would recognize the man's face. They sent his fingerprints to police forces all over the world, but there was no match. They released a detailed description of the man, from his broad shoulders to his polished shoes. He was in his mid-40s with a fit, muscular build and well-groomed hands. His teeth were in perfect condition, but a strange detail stood out. He had a unique pattern on his teeth, a rare condition called hypodontia, which meant he was missing a few of his front teeth from birth. It was a detail that should have made him easy to identify, but it didn't. Days turned into weeks, and the case grew colder. The police were desperate for a break. They found a few more cryptic clues. In a small, hidden pocket sewn into the man's trousers, they found a tiny piece of paper, rolled up tightly. On it were two words, written in a foreign language: Taman Shud. The phrase was identified as a Persian term for the end, or finished. It was a strange, poetic clue, but it led to a dead end. They had no idea where the paper came from, or what it meant. But then, a few weeks later, a local professor of Persian literature recognized the words. They were the final two words of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century collection of Persian poems. The book was a symbol of love and death, of living life to the fullest before it ends. It was a cryptic clue, but it was all they had. They put out a call for the book from which the page was torn, and waited. The wait was long and agonizing, but a few weeks later, a man came forward. He had found a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam in his unlocked car, which had been parked on Somerton Park Beach on the day the man was found. The book was a rare first edition, and a page had been torn out of the back. The torn page was a perfect match for the Taman Shud note found in the man's pocket. The man had not realized the significance of the book, but now he held a key to the mystery. The police carefully examined the book and found a series of strange markings written in pencil on the inside back cover. It was a series of capital letters, seemingly without any meaning. It was a cipher, a code, or a message. The code has been analyzed by cryptographers and intelligence agencies all over the world, but it has never been deciphered. It remains a complete mystery. In the back of the book, the police also found a series of handwritten numbers. They were a telephone number. The number belonged to a woman named Jessica Thompson, who lived in the nearby suburb of Glenelg. She was a nurse and a dancer, and a complete stranger to the police. When they found her, she was startled, but denied ever knowing the man. She claimed to have no knowledge of the book or the man's death. But when the police showed her a bust of the man's face, she had a strange reaction. She looked startled. Her hands went up to her mouth, and she almost fainted. But she quickly regained her composure and insisted she had never seen him before. She claimed the book was a gift from a man named Alfred Boxall, an Australian poet who had worked with her in the past. The police, suspicious of her reaction, investigated Alfred Boxall. He was found alive and well, and he still had his copy of the Rubaiyat in his possession. The book was perfectly intact, with no pages torn out. The police were back to square one. The case was now a complex web of cryptic clues, dead ends, and strange coincidences. The man was still a mystery, and the police were no closer to solving the case. But then, in 2009, a new piece of evidence came to light. The daughter of Jessica Thompson, Kate, came forward. She had grown up hearing stories about the Somerton Man and her mother's strange reaction to the case. Her mother had always been secretive about the past, but on her deathbed, she finally told her a secret. She confessed that she had lied to the police and that she had known the man. She told her that the man, whose name was Karl, was a Soviet spy and that he had been in love with her. He had given her a copy of the Rubaiyat as a gift, and she had given him a copy of her own. She also told her that the Somerton Man was her father and that she was a Soviet spy herself. She told her that the man had come to her house on the night of his death and that he had given her a small, hidden message. It was a single phrase, Taman Shud. She told her that the man's death was a deliberate act of murder, a message from the Soviet government that he had been compromised. This new evidence, a confession from a dying woman, changed everything. The man's death was no longer a mystery, but a political assassination. The case of the Somerton Man was now a Cold War thriller, a story of espionage, love, and betrayal. The man's death was not a suicide, but a murder. The cryptic clues, the Taman Shud note, and the unbreakable code all now had a new meaning. They were a message, a last will and testament from a dying man. The man had known he was going to die, and he had chosen his final words carefully. He was a spy, and his death was a deliberate act of murder. The new evidence, however, was just a theory. The police had no physical evidence to back up the claim, and the case remained a complete mystery. The man's body was buried in a cemetery in Adelaide, with a simple headstone that read, "The Unknown Man." He was a man who had vanished from the world, leaving behind a riddle that has baffled detectives for over 70 years. The case of the Somerton Man remains a complete mystery, a chilling reminder of the Cold War, a story of a man who was erased, and a riddle that has never been solved. The case of the Somerton Man remains open, a constant source of speculation and fascination. The identity of the man remains a complete mystery, and the true meaning of the Taman Shud note and the cryptic code remains unknown. The case of the Somerton Man is a chilling reminder of the Cold War, a story of a man who was erased, and a riddle that has never been solved.